John Money, a psychologist who primarily focused on gender and sexuality, was born in New Zealand in 1921. He immigrated to the United States, where he spent a year as a clinical psychologist before pursuing his PhD at Harvard University. He had an early interest in human sexuality. His dissertation was titled Hermaphroditism, an inquiry into the nature of a human paradox.
He developed a theory that sex isn't merely dependent on chromosomal factors, but instead is a result of several variables. Money further suggested that how someone is nurtured, meaning how someone is raised, is just as important as their nature, or the innate factors that have existed since birth in the development of a person's sexual differentiation. John Money also introduced gender role and gender identity as concepts separate from sex, which is purely biological, and sexual orientation. The theory that the determination of sex depends on a number of variables led to major changes in assigning the sex of rearing for intersex babies.
He emphasized that one's gender role traits associated with one's public presentation of gender had to be learned. For example, a woman who wears a dress and high heels is publicly displaying a culturally accepted female gender role, which is a learned behavior. Gender identity, on the other hand, illustrates one's internal idea of being male, female, or ambivalent. Money was one of the first scientists to acknowledge that one's biological sex may not correspond with his or her gender identity.
During his professional life, Money was respected as an expert on sexual behavior, especially for allegedly demonstrating that gender was learned rather than innate. Many years later, however, it was revealed that his most famous case was fundamentally flawed. The subject was the sex reassignment of David Reimer in what would later become known as the John Joan case.
In 1966, a botched circumcision left David Reimer, aged 8 months, without a penis. Partly based on Dr. Money's recommendation, 14 months later, Reimer was reassigned as female by having his testes removed and being renamed Brenda. Dr. Money further recommended hormone treatment, which was done, and surgical creation of a vagina, which was not done. He offered therapy assisting in David's transition into Brenda and required that David's parents and family not inform David of his origins as male. Brenda needed to believe she was female. Dr. Money's views were aligned with the empiricism school of thought, as his theories relied on environmental factors and David's experiences being enough to align his gender identity as female due to his blank slate, or tabula rasa, nature as an infant. Money believed that an infant was essentially neutral for the first 2 years of life and could be aligned with any gender identity if presented with the correct factors and experiences.
I had doubts all the time because it was just so obvious to everyone, not just to me, that she was masculine.
Even at this early stage, it was clear the case wasn't working as well as the doctor claimed. Some argued that Dr. John Money published only the positive results to make it look as if his theory was holding true. Others disagree.
At the time that John reported the initial reports about how the twins were faring, I believe that they were based on interviews and observations that John had made, and that they, at the time, were accurate.
But Dr. Money's own transcripts show that as early as 1970, well before he publicized Brenda's case as a success, he was aware that there were problems starting to surface.
From this evidence and others, I would say there's not much chance of talking this girl into a change of mind. This negativism was the most extreme she displayed on this visit. Last time, she was almost maniacal in the way she hit, kicked, and otherwise attacked people, and not altogether a playful man.
In order for the experiment to work, Brenda needed to believe she was female. So the year after his book was published, claiming the case was a success, Dr. Money tried to make her accept her new gender. He asked her a series of questions, focusing on the differences between boys and girls.
Now, I've got a good question for you.
What?
How do you tell the difference between a boy and a girl?
Well, a girl has long hair and a boy has short hair.
What if I have short hair and you have short hair?
Well, I have a dress and you have pants.
Yes, that would be a way, but there is another way.
What?
Take their clothes off.
The type of questions that we were asked were sexual in nature, to the point where it'd make me blush. If I would think of talking that way to my son, I'd be very embarrassed. It is very explicit about the sexual parts.
Money's alleged methods included very concerning practices as well, such as photographing Brenda and her brother nude in front of each other, and making them simulate sexual acts on each other to show their gender roles. These acts were not included in Money's files, however, and are only supported by statements from the two siblings.
Money did continue to propose the surgical creation of a vagina until she was 13 years old, but Brenda was continuously opposed to the surgery. His relentless demands that Brenda undergo surgery backfired, resulting in Brenda threatening to kill herself if she had to see the doctor again. Concerned with Brenda's well-being, her parents chose to reveal to her that she was born a boy. Faced with this information, Brenda decided to live as a boy. She accepted the name of David and began to live as such. David continued on to live as a man, eventually marrying and helping to raise his wife's 3 children from a previous marriage.
Then something happened when they were adults that would draw the twins together. David discovered their former psychologist, Dr. Money, continued to publicize the case as a success, proof that a boy could be raised as a girl.
I was appalled, disgusted, and angry when I heard about it, because it was nothing further than the truth.
In 2000, David and his twin brother, Brian, alleged that Dr. Money had taken numerous naked photos of the twins during their treatment and had forced them to engage in sexual play at age 7. In 2002, David's brother was found dead from an overdose of drugs used to treat his schizophrenia. On May 5, 2004, shortly after being asked by his wife for separation, Reimer committed suicide. Reimer's parents have stated that they believe Dr. Money's methodology was responsible for the deaths of both their sons.
Despite the controversy, Money received the Magnus Hirschfeld Medal in 2002 from the German Society for Social Scientific Sexuality Research. A fellowship was created in his name, by him, for the Kinsey Institute, entitled the John Money Fellowship for Scholars of Sexology. There's also an award in his name, paid for by a fund created by his family, given for sexology research. He also had the longest-running grant in the history of the National Institute for Child Health and Human Development, or NICHD.